Thank you, Rav Eliadam, for inviting me to speak. I feel truly humbled. Thank you to all of you at KLR for being there with us from the beginning of the war. Thank you to Lauren and Colin and your helpers for the weekly personalized notes, together with the most welcome, thoughtful gifts. I truly enjoyed seeing the youngsters showing up at our door during this time. The support of KLR is not to be taken for granted, so thank you again. And now, wow. Last year, we were all privileged to hear Danny Hotz share some of his army experiences with us. Never in our wildest of dreams did we imagine what was in store for us personally, for Am Yisrael, and for the world at large. October the 7th, corresponding to the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, taught us all so much. Political affiliation did not matter. An entire nation united as we were attacked by Hamas. Soldiers flew in from all over the world just to get here in order to defend our special country. This was vastly different from 1945. We now have a country, and more important, an army, and whoever was not in Israel at the time did all they could to get on the first plane back to Israel. Everybody was running in every direction. Reservists, people wanting to serve, people just getting into the cars and driving to the battlefront with their personal weapons. Am Yisrael was volunteering in every sphere and on every plane, from providing basic necessities for soldiers to food and army gear. The calls for help were numerous, and those who had voiced unhappiness at what was going on in Israel before October the 7th now all rallied together to help in every direction possible. I remember saying to your Eli that I felt bad, as I didn't feel that I was contributing. Her answer to me was, Emma, you have 2 sons in the army. And then the worrying, the sleepless nights, imagining that I heard knocking at my door and continuously running to the front door to check through the people. Difficulty concentrating at work and in dealing with life and daily routine. The continuous feeling of heaviness as we were all so anxious. Feeling immense pain for those who had lost loved ones at the Nova Festival. In pain for the heinous crimes committed by Hamas and Gazan civilians. In pain for both the hostages and their families. Yaroni had been in touch with us on that Shabbat and had told us not to leave our homes. We never realized how serious the situation was and what was yet to unfold. I personally remember saying, give me Corona any time. And then I never heard from Yaron Hy for days on end, and I remember the anxiety and extreme concern. But I knew that he was alive. He would call or message me briefly before going into Gaza, and I recall the excitement every time there was some sign of life. I even remember our excitement at hearing the news reporter giving the weather forecast for Gaza. The heaviness accompanied me in everything I did, and even my swimming speed was affected. I felt sad, and I don't think it would be presumptuous to say that everyone was in shock and felt so sad and lost. And then the 3 knocks. How on earth had I thought that I had managed this before? There is no mistaking the real knocks. When I first heard the knocking, I ignored them, and then they knocked again. It was 1:15 a.m. on the morning of December the 27th. I went to the door and looked through the people. I opened the door and then ran to call your Eli, who was thankfully home. There were 3 of them at the door. I knew it was for Yaron, as Dovi was home, as he had just become a dad. I don't know what I thought, but then the senior officer of the 3 announced, and I can't remember his exact words, but something about Yaron Hy falling in battle on December the 26th. I felt limp and deflated like a balloon with no air, and then memory blackout, remembering nothing of what had just transpired or what had been said. I felt lifeless. I remember just collapsing on the couch. And then the rounds of telephone calls to the close family, and once all family members had been notified, close friends were called too. I remember being told to shower at 5 a.m. I remember everybody saying that the house would be streaming with people and the dreaded announcement, Hutala Pirsum, would be on the news at 6 a.m. And then hearing Yaroni's name on the news, seeing his beautiful smiling face on the front page of the newspapers, beneath the headline, Halochamim Shenaflu B'Krav. And then the realization that Yaroni now belongs to everyone, all of Am Yisrael. The love of Israel as we drove behind the coffin and thousands of people lining the streets, waving the Israeli flag and paying tribute to our dear Yaroni. I'd been to a few military funerals and I knew the drill, but never knew that I was going to be part of that scenario. Overwhelmed at the thousands who came to the funeral, overwhelmed at the thousands who came to our home, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love, overwhelmed by those who did not know us but came to pay tribute to our hero. The communal love and outreach were on levels that I had never known. I learned so much in that week. The Shiva was like one long day, and eventually that day came to an end. Families who had just finished Shiva came to visit us, came to empathize. We learned of their strength. I remember the day we got up from Shiva. I couldn't function and seemed to be walking around aimlessly, dealing with our new reality and the fact that our lives had changed drastically. Our lives up until December the 26th, and then from that day on. The numbness, and then I realized my strength too. Now I was that person going to other Shiva homes and speaking to the moms and saying, I know how you feel. I've been there. I feel your pain and know what you're going through. And then the transition from Shiva to getting back to some form of routine and normalcy. The first of everything is so difficult. The first time you go back to the supermarket. The first time you venture out. The first time I drove on the highway and saw the words, Yachad L'Natseach, and after having just buried my lifeline, the tears choked up. The first time I went back to the water. The first time I came into contact with people. The first time I went to a public gathering. The first time I went back to a coffee shop. The first time I went back to the office. The first time I went back to shul. The first Kabbalat Shabbat, which I used to love, and now I find myself just standing there in shock. The first Birkat HaChodesh, the first Purim, the first Seder without a Yaroni, the first Niskor, the first time I went out to a Shabbat meal, the first birthday, the first Simcha, the first time I went to a Yaroni barbecue event, which I'll talk about later, the first time seeing Yaroni's name carved in stone, the first time hearing soldiers getting an aliyat shul and the singing accompanying it. I was numb. I couldn't sing. The tears just poured down. And then I had a revelation. Yaron did come home. Yaroni's whole body came home. We could see him and we could touch him. We could kiss and say goodbye to him. We could sing a malach to him. And from that moment on, I was able to sing B'Shavu Banim. In every situation, no matter how challenging, we need to be able to find the gratitude and positivity despite the excruciating pain. And here I should emphasize our immense gratitude that Yaroni's body was safely rescued by an elite army unit and returned to Israel. And we were also able to donate his organs and fulfill his wish of saving others even after his passing. In death, he saved his unit too, as the terrorists who confronted Yaroni were en route to the whole unit. Sometimes I honestly don't know where I get my strength from. I have faced so many challenges in my life, and I do believe that Hashem gives people what they can handle. But did he really have to test me again? And with my lifeline? So I guess I get my strength from swimming, my emunah, and my family. And yes, the order changes from time to time. I knew that for solace, I had to get back into the water as quickly as possible. And this I did. Vayigula Rov. I am a swimmer. In fact, I am a long-distance swimmer. And by setting myself goals and challenges, I am constantly motivated and able to overcome every challenge, including the one I am now facing. I have a swimming bucket list, and by checking and replenishing it, I build up my inner strength. During the many hours in the water, my mind works, sometimes overtime, And whatever comes to my mind while swimming, I go with it, or as they say in Hebrew, ani zoremet. Sometimes it could be mundane things. Sometimes it could be important, life-changing events. I would repeatedly go through the scenarios surrounding Yaroni's death. I think about his last moments. I think how he must have felt in the last seconds of his life. I've been told that he didn't suffer, and for that too, I'm eternally grateful. I think about the sensitivity of his commander when finding Yaroni, closing his eyes, covering him with a blanket and saying Kaddish over him. His commander had lost a brother at the Nova Festival and couldn't say Kaddish for his brother. But now he had the opportunity to say Kaddish for our dear Yaroni. Yaroni was so proud to serve our country. He was the deputy commander of the Shaked battalion in the Givati brigade and an officer who was loved by all. Just a little history. He was drafted into the army during the corona pandemic and was due to finish his 4 years of service in March 2024. There were very few army took us in because of corona. He went into the army and was there for 35 days straight because of corona. On one of our calls during the war, he had said that this time he was going to surpass the 35 days. They were not sent home. He was not a reservist and so he had no choice but to abide by orders. He was content despite the difficulties. He was responsible, he was motivated and sometimes aggravated too. He did say in one of his phone calls to me how he would love to come home for Shabbos. He hadn't been home in a good few months and how he would love to be at Kabbalat Shabbat. Well, this did happen. After having been away for 80 days, he surprised both me and Dara. I got to make his favorite foods. In another phone call, he had told me what he would like to eat when coming home. And like a normal Jewish mother, the ingredients were bought and awaited his homecoming. Wow, what a Shabbat. It was just too perfect. And I never realized then, but the tears that flowed throughout that Shabbat were happy tears. In the Kiddush, I'm just adding this, he had gone to find me food and he knew what I liked and he knew what he liked. He said, Emma, where's the pasta and where's the herring? And my answer to him was, Yaroni, we're at war. When I said goodbye to Yaroni on a subsequent Sunday morning, I must be honest, I didn't feel at ease. I, who usually blessed him on whatever day and whenever I could, did not bless him as I hugged him goodbye. How I regret not having given him that last blessing. In fact, on the Tuesday morning, the morning of his death, I was in the pool and battling to swim. I remember saying to myself, just swim, you don't know where you will be tomorrow. I just had a feeling, and I never shared this with anyone. And now, my if only list is endless, and even includes the things that used to bug me, but if only. And so besides having to deal with our grief, and the general national grief of another fallen soldier, our aim now is to keep the memory of Yaron Hy alive, to teach and learn from his legacy, to share what he loved. He loved his family, he loved his friends. He loved playing soccer and was a crazy Liverpool fan. He loved his food and especially barbecuing for friends and family alike. He loved experimenting in the kitchen and did so with such joy. He loved being there for everybody and helping whomever was in need. He was able to bridge any personal and social gaps. He had lots of patience, but we also learned of his impatience when in a hurry. He loved his music, especially the olden goldies. He loved his Eretz Israel and going to the different Mayanot. He loved singing and especially his favorite Zmirot on Shabbat. He loved sharing Advar Torah with us. He had the most amazing general knowledge and a brilliant memory. He had great navigation skills and he was mature way beyond his years. He lived his life to the full. He did not waste any time and packed whatever he could into the little free time he had. And let us not forget that amazing smile. Yaroni was our gift for almost 24 years. And for this, we need to be grateful. During the Shiva, Daniel's friends thought of a befitting way to celebrate and memorize Yaroni. Yaroni was the king of barbecues, and so the Yaroni Barbecue Initiative was born, and the idea of establishing a Mangal Shel Yaroni. The barbecues are run in the same way as Yaroni did them, this time with love for and devotion to our soldiers. The initiative is run by volunteers, and yes, I've also been to these events. We go to any unit that we can get to. Money is raised from donors all over, and as long as there is money and soldiers that we can get to, we will continue this part of his legacy. And for us, we are now VIPs, which title we could have seriously done without. The family constantly receives invitations to attend different events ranging from sports and social to educational. Our calendars are jam-packed, and here too, we will do whatever it takes to keep Yaroni's memory alive. Thank you for listening to me. I'm Yisrael Chai.